We got one more call here that I want to get to before we wrap up tonight's show. So I want to get to Glen in Pennsylvania, who's been waiting here. Glen, what's going on?
Oh, not too much. Tonight I wanted to talk about that God is so unlikely that it can be ruled out.
Okay.
And, someone who believes in God believes that a complex conscious God is more likely to exist than a simple single cell life form.
I'm assuming you mean like Yahweh,
rational.
like the Christian God in particular, right?
Well, any conscious God.
Okay.
It's just any conscious God would have to be so complex that they're going to compare the likelihood of that existing to a single-celled life form. Doesn't really make any sense to me. Abiogenesis is clearly rational, whereas Genesis is not. Mm-hmm. And that really seems to be the big discrepancy in the two positions. And the God seems to be so likely that it can be ruled out right along with flat Earth, young Earth. These things can easily be ruled out. And the same thing with any conscious God compared to the alternative explanation of simple life forms. And anything we've ever observed goes from simple to complex, not complex to simple.
Sure. Yeah, I think in terms of explanatory power, right? Like abiogenesis as the origins of life versus everything created in 7 days, whatever that might mean, like from a conscious unknown pretty much to most people, invisible entity. Yeah, like we don't really have a lot of evidence for it. At least with abiogenesis, we have a plausible set of conditions that could occur, even if we don't have the exact sort of timeline or exact form of events. Now, I mean, we can speculate on it. We can at least kind of examine whether we can do some of this stuff in the lab. And they've done some interesting stuff with abiogenesis in the lab. It's not completely conclusive with some of the stuff they've done, but they've been doing that since at least the 1960s. So it is kind of cool. But that's also with the benefit of the scientific knowledge that you and I would know, Glenn, that other people maybe wouldn't know. And so the idea of a big bang for some people, well, if they understand it as the universe just banged one day and just came into existence, no problem. Like, yeah, that sounds crazy and illogical if that's my understanding of it. But I know that's not exactly what that theory says, right? So I think a lot of it is just a problem of science miscommunication and just a lack of knowledge on the specifics. I was talking to somebody the other day about like, yeah, you know, like I definitely think this was an interesting thing because I've never heard somebody say this. She said, I believe in the Big Bang, but I don't think evolution is true because like, and she said, like, because why are there still monkeys if they're people? You know, obviously we're not going to go into that because that's been explained. But I never heard somebody say they believe in the Big Bang and not evolution. I think that's kind of an interesting take. But like, you know, obviously with her understanding of evolution, like that wasn't going to fly. I could, you know, we started talking about it and stuff. But like, yeah, it's just a misunderstanding of some of these ideas. I think is the root of why people can be convinced of this stuff, right, Justin? What do you think?
Yeah, so in a conversation, since I am not a evolutionary biologist, I'm not an astrophysicist or a quantum physicist. In a conversation like this, I honestly try and stay away from the evolutionary abiogenesis Big Bang conversation because when it comes to skilled apologists that I've come across, they will use jumping onto this subject as a way to shift the burden of proof. I like to stick to a simplicity of let's boil down what a hypothesis is and how you can have a hypothesis. And there's needs to be two things. You need to be able to, one, test it, and two, falsify it. Now, you say that if a Christian or a theist of some sort says that a God is possible, or it is probable, it is it is more likely than whatever they're comparing it to, then now you have to bring them down to the position of how is it probable before we've ever actually shown that it is possible. And if we haven't shown that it is possible, then we can't even count it as something that you would call likely.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out too is that when we think about these issues, we're thinking about it in the evaluation of like specific claims. You know, we're looking at these claims on like a case-by-case basis. And most people, when they first develop these beliefs, they're not even looking at it that way. They're just given a narrative by which to follow that can make sense to them. And if you don't have the facts and pieces of of what these other ideas might look like, then it's kind of hard to evaluate stuff on a case-by-case basis too, which is why it's good to have these conversations so you can inform people and give people a chance to kind of explore it in a way that they wouldn't have. Because how can you look up, you can't look up something about something you don't know if you don't even know what to look up. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of one of those things, like I can't know about stuff I don't know about in the first place. So, you know, yeah. What do you think, Glenn?
I myself, I accept the burden of proof, no problem. A theist has to believe in the most complex being as opposed to a single cell creature. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's like you're talking about the most likely scenario of single cell creatures coming into existence versus the most complex being imaginable coming into existence or existing forever. They just don't have the same validity.
Yeah. Thinking about it strictly in those terms, I agree with you. But you know, I can easily see somebody who believes in God just saying, "Well, God just works in mysterious ways, man. He's just he's outside of space and time. He doesn't. Your rules and logic don't matter to him, you know, because he created it. So, you know, I mean,
but it's the least. That's the least likely scenario, though. The most likely is that everything just formed naturally, single cell creatures. I mean, you're talking about, you know, just fiction versus nonfiction. It's not even a close. It's just like flat Earth and young Earth. It's not realistic. People have these debates. I can't understand that they have interest in that. It seems that we're past that. And now I think that we're past this.
Yeah, you preach to the choir. You know, Justin, you had something you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I completely respect and agree with your position on, you know, what you think about what is more likely, because obviously we've been able to see evolution in the works. We've been able to observe it in real life, and we have ways of bringing things. You know, the graduating point of an idea is a theory, and you know, we have the theory of evolution by means of natural selection. And we have, you know, the Big Bang Theory. I mean, there's a reason why it's called a theory. And that's a lot of times I get upset when somebody will say, well, it's just a theory. I mean, at that point in time, I know for a fact that they don't understand exactly what the definition of a theory is and all of the work and peer review that an idea has to go through to be concluded as a theory. And a theory, you know, in my mind, is the best model that we currently have. When technology gets better and we have more time to observe these things, we may get a more pinpoint answer. For example, you know, we've changed multiple times how old we think the universe and the Earth is. We've done it multiple times, but that's because we have found better technology and gotten a more accurate answer upon that. The only disagreement that I would have is that I cannot prove. And I'm gonna bring a comparison up. I cannot prove to you that Santa Claus does not exist. Obviously, we both think that's completely arbitrary to think that Santa Claus exists. But how would I empirically prove that Santa Claus does not exist?
But Santa Claus is so unlikely that he can be ruled out.
I agree with you on that, but how many other variables might there be? How are we able to say
many,
that?
When you're talking about the most likely scenario versus the least likely scenario, be ruled out.
Absolutely. Wouldn't we have to have our hands on every single scenario? Kind of like Dan was talking about a minute ago. We can't know what we don't know. So there might be variables and there may be scenarios that we don't exactly know about or have the knowledge or are able to see. And that's kind of why I hold a more agnostic position than a Gnostic, because I truly don't know what's out there. I don't know if in 300 years we find this third or fourth option other than there is a God, or you know, there's a God, or there's this, or the universe came about naturally. I mean, I don't know what's not known, so I can't hold a Gnostic position. Although, like I said before, I do completely respect the position that you hold. We agree on pretty much every single point, except I don't hold quite as much of a bold position as you do.
So you believe that a complex being formed before single cell creatures. That's what you actually believe is possible.
What he's saying is you can't completely rule out the possibility just because now, and he's not even saying, I think Justin would say that if you had that belief, then yeah, belief is unjustified. I don't think I think he would agree with you that it's an unjustified belief, but I don't think Justin is going as far as to say that there isn't a possibility of that being the case. In the same way that, is there a possibility in the case that Santa Claus is real? Yeah, it would be super, 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 super unlikely. But
scary.
I can't, I guess, definitively say for all time that it's not. Now, of course, we can't do that for anything. So like, it's kind of, it's an unrealistic standard to meet, which is why we kind of want to tend towards the language of kind of justified and unjustified beliefs. Probability and stuff, and that we would probably agree with you, Glenn. It's like, yeah, the probability of the Christian God being real is really, really, really low based on just everything we know about the world, and it's not, we wouldn't call it a justified belief, but we also just can't say that it's completely just not even a possibility, because it's just not something we're capable of saying on like a philosophical level. So I think that's where we make that distinction.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree, but it's so unlikely that it can be ruled out. That's what my position is. So many things in life are so unlikely they can be ruled out. A lot of people say anything is possible. That's not true.
If I was to try and simplify what I was saying before a little bit more, what I'm saying is that I agree with you that I think that it is so unlikely that I wouldn't even use the word likely, because God has not even been shown to be possible, let alone probable. So there's not even a basis or a percentage of how likely it could be. My point is that I cannot prove to you that it is impossible.
Yeah,
I just can't do it.
Yeah, can't prove a negative.
But you should be able to rule it out, though.
What do you mean by rule it out?
That's my position.
What is rule it out?
I'm a strong atheist. I believe that God does not exist. I don't hold the weak atheist position that most of the ACA holds, that they just want to have the burden of proof on the other folks. I accept the burden of proof. Any conscious God, not just the Christian God, any conscious God is so unlikely it can be ruled out, along with other scenarios. Flat Earth, that can be ruled out. Young Earth, that can be ruled out. The tooth fairy can be ruled out. There's a lot of things in life that can be ruled out.
Clarify, I don't think God exists either. I just don't know God doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like there is like I feel like there's just a bit of a difference there, because if there is a God and he has all these powers and stuff like that, then yeah, like he could just like do all kinds of illusions on me right now, and I wouldn't even know how to handle that. So like that's why.
You really believe that's a possibility?
I think if I understand, what, if it's outside of my understanding, then I can't even like Justin was saying, I can't even quantify it. I can't even quantify it. It's a no. My answer is null. There's no way I could even answer that,
Okay.
but my answer can't but Glenn, my answer can't be no way, no how. It can't be absolutely not.
No, but it can be 99.999 with a whole bunch
of nines
after that.
I agree, but it's not 100.
Which makes it so unlikely that it can be ruled out.
It's like calculating.
A lot of other
really close to the infinitesimal, but it's not quite there.
Glenn, do you believe that 99.99% would be Gnostic?
Yes, I that's where I'm at.
Okay.
So we just have different definitions of what absolute means.
Yeah.
I think absolute means complete, absolute certainty, without any shadow of a doubt.
So close to, well, I would say close enough, because close as you can get to 100%, and anything else does not make sense at all.
Yeah. Well, cool.
And I that's what I believe. Strong.
I think we're right there with you, honestly. I think we're close, if not that as well. So, Glenn, thanks for calling in and giving us your thoughts on that. Great conversation. And I hope to hear from you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, cool.